I need you to listen carefully to this story, because what I'm about to share isn't just another tale about cybercrime, it's personal. It's about my grandmother, a woman whose kindness was so pure that someone saw it as an opportunity to exploit her. A man took advantage of her vulnerability, and in doing so, he triggered something inside me that he never saw coming. Trust me, you'll want to stay with me until the very end of this story, because justice was served in a way he never expected. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this story with someone who believes kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. Now, let me take you back to the day it all began. My grandmother called me that evening, her voice trembling, not because of age but because of something much worse, fear and shame. "Pius," she whispered, as though saying it too loudly would make it real, "they took everything." At first, I didn't understand. She had always been careful with money, meticulous with her accounts. But as she explained, I felt my chest tighten and my hands curl into fists. A man, young, smooth-talking, had convinced her that she was making a donation, $1 million, to help the less privileged. She believed him because that's who she was, generous, trusting, the kind of person who always looked for the good in others. But behind that friendly voice was nothing more than a predator. He tricked her into giving away her account passcodes, and in one sweep, $20 million, her entire life savings, my grandfather's legacy, everything she had, was gone. Do you know what it feels like when someone you love, someone who raised you, is left shattered because of another person's greed? I do. And I'll tell you this, rage is a strange thing. It doesn't roar at first. It simmers. It whispers. It tells you to breathe, to listen, to remember every detail, because one day soon, you'll make things right. I asked her every question I could. What did he sound like? What platform did he use? How did he first approach her? And with each answer, the picture became clearer. He wasn't just another scammer lurking in the dark corners of the internet. No, this one had confidence. He mocked kindness itself. And in that moment, sitting in my office with her words echoing in my ears, I made a vow. I wasn't going to let this go. You see, I'm not just anybody. I've spent years in the trenches of cybersecurity, defending people from men exactly like him. I know how they think. I know the tricks they use. But this wasn't just about professional pride, this was family. This was blood. And the worst mistake he made wasn't stealing the money. It was mocking my grandmother's trust. That night, I tracked down the first threads of his operation. It wasn't difficult for me, I've followed bigger fish. His digital fingerprints were everywhere, scattered like breadcrumbs for anyone who knew where to look. But I wasn't just going to barge in guns blazing. That's not how you win a war like this. The first step was confronting him. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to look him in the eye, even if it was through a screen. When I finally reached him, I expected denial, maybe even fear. What I got instead was laughter. Cold. Mocking. He called my grandmother stupid, naive. He told me people like her were made to be prey. And when I demanded he return the money, do you know what he did? He smirked, threw one last insult, and blocked me. That was it. That was the match that lit the fuse. Imagine this, you're a thief who thinks you've just pulled off the perfect crime. You're celebrating, laughing, pouring champagne into glasses you didn't earn. But what you don't know is that someone is already on your trail. Someone with the tools, the skills, and the allies to bring your entire world crashing down. That's the position he was in. Only, he didn't know it yet. I went back to my grandmother that night. She was sitting quietly in her chair, the house too silent, her hands folded like she was praying. "I'm so sorry, Pius," she said, her voice small. But she had nothing to apologize for. The guilt didn't belong to her, it belonged to him. I promised her, right then and there, that she would see justice. Not revenge. Justice. But promises are easy to make. The real challenge was figuring out how to keep it. And in my world, keeping that promise meant playing it smart. It meant staying within the law, no matter how much I wanted to go rogue. Because if I crossed that line, then I'd be no better than him. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to fight this battle alone. I picked up the phone and called my firm. Then I called a contact at the FBI. And as I laid out the details, the pieces of the puzzle began to click into place. This wasn't going to be fast, and it wasn't going to be simple. But we had something far more powerful than his arrogance. We had patience, strategy, and the law on our side. And as for him, while he thought he was untouchable, while he bragged and prepared for what he called his victory party, he had no idea that the ground beneath him was already starting to crack. This was only the beginning. I told you this story wasn't just about money, it was about principle. You see, when someone steals $20 million, you expect them to run, to hide, to cover their tracks. But not this guy. No, he wanted the world to see him shine. He wanted to flaunt stolen wealth like a badge of honor. That arrogance was his weakness, and it was the one thing I was going to use against him. But let me rewind for a second. After my first confrontation with him, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the glow of my computer screens, replaying his laugh in my head, the way he mocked my grandmother's kindness. My instincts screamed at me to strike back right then and there. I could have done it too. Taken control of his devices, shut down his accounts, erased him from the digital world. But that would have been revenge, not justice. And I had promised myself, and my grandmother, that this fight would be clean. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to take him down alone. I needed a team, and not just any team, I needed the weight of the law behind me. I called my cybersecurity firm first. I'd been with them for years, building firewalls, tracing breaches, recovering stolen data. When I explained what happened, the room went silent. $20 million stolen from a grandmother under the guise of charity. They didn't hesitate. They were in. Next, I called a contact at the FBI. He was an old friend, someone I trusted, someone who had walked me through more than one sticky case. I gave him everything, the logs, the IP traces, the messages. He listened, and when I was done, he said the words I needed to hear, "We'll back you on this. But we do it by the book." By the book. Exactly what I wanted. Now here's where things got interesting. While we were piecing together the legal side, warrants, jurisdiction, evidence collection, I was building the digital map of his operation. Every scammer thinks they're clever, but they always leave footprints. A late-night login from a personal device. A payment routed through an account that doesn't belong. A careless click that reveals more than they realize. And this guy? He was sloppy. Through legal monitoring, we traced him moving money like a child spilling breadcrumbs through a forest. Some of it went into offshore accounts, some into crypto wallets, but a chunk was being funneled into his everyday life, cars, jewelry, parties. It was almost laughable. He wasn't just a criminal, he was an amateur playing dress-up in a world he didn't understand. But while we watched him, he was watching himself in the mirror, proud and untouchable. He even posted about it online, bragging in subtle ways, hinting at his big win. That arrogance made our job easier, because arrogance blinds you. Then came the message that changed everything. He announced a party. A victory party, he called it. A night where he and his crew would celebrate the millions they had stolen, the lives they had ruined. They thought no one could touch them. They thought the world was theirs to toy with. But here's the thing, while he was sending out invitations, we were tightening the noose. The FBI fast-tracked the warrants. My firm prepared the technical side, making sure we could trace every dollar, every stolen cent, back to where it came from. We weren't just going to arrest him, we were going to restore what he had taken. I remember sitting in the briefing room the night before the party. The air was thick with anticipation. Agents laid out the plan, where we'd move in, how the arrests would be handled, how we'd secure the evidence. My part was clear. I would help ensure the digital side of the takedown went smoothly, that the victims' accounts were restored as much as possible. But I'll be honest with you, part of me still wanted to break the rules. Part of me wanted to go rogue, to make him feel the same helplessness he made my grandmother feel. That's the dangerous part about revenge, it whispers in your ear, telling you justice isn't enough. But I pushed it down. I wasn't going to let him turn me into a criminal too. Instead, I focused on the bigger picture. The victims. The families. The people who woke up one morning to find their savings gone, their trust shattered. This wasn't just about my grandmother anymore, it was about all of them. So we worked. Hour after hour, piecing together the trail, building a case so airtight there'd be no escape. And while we prepared, he partied. He bought champagne. He rented a hall. He told his crew to dress sharp, because they were going to celebrate like kings. I can still see it in my mind, him laughing, pouring another drink, thinking he had beaten the system. But what he didn't know was that the system was already inside his walls, watching, waiting, ready to strike. And me? I was right there, sitting behind my screens, watching it all unfold. I wasn't just the hunter. I was the storm he never saw coming. The night was approaching. The stage was set. The FBI had their warrants, my firm had the digital locks ready to snap shut, and I had one goal, to bring him down, legally, publicly, and permanently. He thought he was throwing a party to celebrate his victory. He didn't realize he was preparing the stage for his downfall. This was no longer about if we would catch him. It was about when. And that, when, was closer than he ever imagined. The night of the party finally arrived, and I swear, the air felt electric. You could almost taste the arrogance radiating from that mansion. Expensive cars lined the driveway, music boomed so loud it rattled the windows, and laughter spilled out into the night sky. To everyone inside, it was a night of triumph. To us, it was the night justice would knock at the door. I sat in a mobile operations van just a block away. Screens glowed around me, each one showing feeds, network traffic, surveillance cameras, live body cams. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with focus. The FBI team was already in position. My role was clear: monitor the digital flow, trigger the fund reversals, and lock down every account the second the warrants were executed. Inside, he was the star of his own twisted show. The scammer lifted his glass of champagne, surrounded by his crew, other men who thought stealing from the vulnerable made them powerful. They toasted to their success, laughing as if the world belonged to them. But while he grinned, I was watching the last of his stolen empire slip through his fingers in real time. With a few keystrokes, and with full legal clearance, my team began reversing transactions. Victims' accounts lit up with unexpected deposits, their stolen money returning home. Each confirmation message felt like a heartbeat. Families who thought they'd lost everything were being restored, second by second. And he had no idea it was happening. Then, the signal came through my headset: execute. The raid team moved fast. Black SUVs rolled in, doors flung open, and agents in tactical gear stormed the property. From my screen, I watched the chaos erupt. The music cut. Lights froze. Partygoers screamed and scattered. In the middle of it all, the scammer froze with his champagne glass still in hand, his arrogant smirk collapsing into confusion. FBI. Nobody move. The sound echoed over the feed, sharp and commanding. His crew tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Agents swarmed every exit, locking it down. One by one, the men who had bragged about their scams were slammed against walls, cuffed, and read their rights. But my eyes stayed locked on him. The mastermind. The one who had mocked my grandmother's kindness. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. He looked around for an escape, but there was none. Two agents grabbed him, forced his hands behind his back, and snapped on the cuffs. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. That sound, the glass breaking, was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. In the van, my team and I exchanged a look. It wasn't a cheer, it wasn't a celebration. It was relief. Because this wasn't just about one arrest, it was about sending a message. That no matter how clever you think you are, no matter how untouchable you believe yourself to be, justice will catch up to you. I watched as they marched him out of the house, his designer shirt rumpled, his perfect smile gone. He saw the flashing cameras waiting at the gate. Reporters shouting questions. Neighbors staring. The same man who once laughed at my grandmother was now silent, swallowed by the weight of his downfall. And while he was being shoved into the back of a squad car, the final transfers cleared. Victims across the country were waking up to alerts on their phones, money they thought was gone forever flowing back into their accounts. I pictured each one, a father staring in disbelief, a mother crying tears of relief, a family whispering thanks into the night. This was the moment I had waited for. Not the raid, not the spectacle, but the restoration. The proof that justice can put things back where they belong. The scammer thought that night was his victory party. But in reality, it was his funeral. Not of his life, but of his arrogance, his freedom, and his illusion of power. And me? I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. I had promised my grandmother justice, and on that night, justice was served. But the story wasn't over yet. When the sirens faded into the night and the mansion emptied of chaos, I finally allowed myself to breathe. For weeks I had carried this fire in my chest, this constant weight of anger and determination. But as I sat there in that operations van, watching the scammer's car disappear into the distance, I realized something important. This wasn't about me winning. It was about everyone he had wronged finally getting their lives back. The next morning, news outlets across the country were buzzing. Headlines screamed about the multi-million-dollar cybercrime bust. Photos of the scammer in handcuffs were everywhere. The internet was divided, some mocked him, some pitied him, but most applauded the fact that justice had been served. For me, the satisfaction wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet notifications rolling in from banks, accounts restored, balances corrected, people finally made whole. I'll never forget one particular message the FBI forwarded to me. It was from an older couple in the Midwest, victims of the same scam. They had lost their retirement fund, everything they had planned for their future. When the money was returned, they wrote, "We thought our lives were over. You gave us hope again." That right there, that was the real victory. But even with all the restitution and arrests, there was one more moment I was waiting for. I needed to go back to where it all started, my grandmother's house. When I walked in, she was sitting in her favorite chair by the window, her knitting basket at her side. She looked up, her eyes searching mine, and I told her everything. The arrest. The funds returned. The look on his face when the handcuffs clicked shut. Her eyes watered, but it wasn't sadness, it was pride. "You didn't let anger control you," she said softly. "You fought the right way." Those words hit harder than anything else. Because the truth is, I had been tempted. Tempted to go rogue, to retaliate outside the law. But if I had, I wouldn't be standing there, free, telling her the story. I would have crossed a line I could never uncross. I sat with her for a while, the quiet of her home wrapping around us. She wasn't thinking about the millions or the headlines. She was thinking about something much simpler, the fact that kindness, no matter how much the world tries to exploit it, is never weakness. That night, as I left her house, I looked up at the sky and thought about the scammer sitting in a holding cell. He was probably still trying to figure out how everything had unraveled so fast. He thought he had beaten the system, but the truth is, he had underestimated something more powerful than his schemes, people who refuse to give up. The law is slow sometimes, yes. Justice doesn't always arrive when we want it to. But when it does, it lands like thunder. And when it does, no amount of arrogance can shield you from it. As for me, I didn't celebrate with champagne or parties. My victory was seeing my grandmother smile again. My victory was knowing that dozens of victims across the country could breathe easier. That's the kind of win you don't post online. That's the kind of win you carry in your chest. And to the scammer, if he ever watches this from wherever he ends up, I'll leave him with this: you thought kindness was something you could exploit. You thought generosity made people weak. But in the end, it was your arrogance that made you blind. You didn't just steal money. You stole trust. And that's why you lost everything. So here's the lesson I want everyone listening to take away: kindness is not weakness. And justice, though sometimes slow, always comes. This is where my story ends. But for him, his story is only beginning, behind bars, with years of silence to remind him of the night his empire crumbled. And for my grandmother? She still knits by the window, still smiles at strangers, still believes in the goodness of people. Because no scam, no thief, no predator can ever steal who she truly is. That, my friends, is the ultimate revenge. And that's how the predator became the prey, how arrogance collapsed under the weight of justice. But now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if someone scammed your family like this? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'll be reading every single one. If this story gripped you, make sure to smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness is never weakness. And don't forget to subscribe, because more true stories, just like this one, are on the way. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and never underestimate the power of justice.